Hey guys, it's Jaden. Today we're having a very special conversation because I like the Trek. I love the Star Trek, and I found someone who also likes it. Introducing Landon. He has his own personal YouTube channel. I'll make sure I include all his stuff in below. But why don't you just introduce yourself?
Hey, yeah, my name is Landon Haynes, and I have a podcast YouTube channel called Foresight Paradigm, and I talk about like all kinds of like deep topics, science, philosophy, religion, and I'm a big Star Trek fan too. All my whole life, I've been a big Star Trek fan. So yeah, I'm glad we're in a new golden age of Star Trek TV. I remember in '05, the last episode of Enterprise, and you know, fans not having any idea when it was going to come back or how it was going to come back. But man, it's exploded again, and it's pretty cool. Yeah,
And I think that some people might not say it's a golden age, but I don't care about those people because there's a lot of controversy over for some reason over people's feelings toward Discovery and Picard, and some of it warranted, but others of it is just okay, calm down. Do
yeah,
you want this or do you not want this? What is it that you want? Um, and I also think like with social media and the I can't think of the word, but pushing it up to basically have a different type of conversation that more people have more opinions about things. And I ended up getting into Star Trek because of one of my friends. Well, actually, no, it became a bigger thing because of him. So the first, I know this is about to sound really bad. The first series I ever watched was actually Discovery, because I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. Let's watch this. Let's see what it's all about. And I don't know. I liked it. I liked the movies, and I was like, okay, well then my friend turned out to be this big giant Trek fan, and then he got me into watching DS9 and Voyager and Enterprise, which I will say, Enterprise being the first full series that I finished, being like, oh my god, this is great. um,
yeah.
so and there's a whole conversation to be had on the possibilities of what that next season would have been and how great that could have been, but I know we are where we
Yeah,
are.
season 4 of Enterprise is the only season that I own like on Blu-ray because yeah, it was really good, and it started doing what like I think people wanted it to do is be that prequel series that tied into the whole you know franchise and kind of showed like the founding of the Federation and things like that. And I think if they had gotten another season, then it would have been at least even just one more season would have been great. I mean, it really would have been.
Oh,
But
I completely agree. Like it's
yeah,
it's still though I think it still holds itself pretty well within the whole canon, I guess that's what we would say. The whole everything about it. But I think well, Voyager, I'm just gonna be honest, Voyager is trash. I
really.
I hate that series.
My opinion is that TNG, DS9, and Voyager are all the best equally in different ways for different reasons. So I mean, I know a lot of people don't like Voyager, and I don't know why. Really, because I love the characters. I mean, not Neelix, but you know, most of the other Seven of Nine. That's one of the best characters that's ever been in the franchise, in my opinion. I mean, Balana Torres, uh, gosh, Tuvok. I mean, the Doctor. The Doctor is maybe top 5
Yeah.
of all characters in the entire franchise. How can you not like them? I mean,
See, for me, it wasn't really necessarily about not really liking. Okay, so I started Voyager, and I know season one is always a little bit rough.
yeah,
And then I got to see. I just skipped to season two. I was like, I'm not gonna go through this. So I skipped to season two. I was like, okay, I see where this is going. But then as I was watching, and I just started losing interest. And I know my friend was really just like, you didn't even get to Seven of Nine. You really didn't even get into the big mix of it all. And I was like, yeah, but I kind of just gave up on it. And maybe one day I'll go back and actually finish watching it. But for me, just Voyager just it didn't do it for me, and that's when I went straight into DS9. I was like, okay, this is
that was DS9 for me. At first, I did not get it, and a lot of people don't get it because it's so different than all the other Star Trek series, right? I mean, first off, it's you're on a space station, and there is like a lot of like serialized storytelling and less episodic, right? And just a lot of things about it, are very different. But it is, I mean, once you get it right, it's really good. I mean, and it has kind of like an almost epic scale to it, with the Dominion War. I don't know how if you've seen all of it yet or not, but okay, yeah. And I mean, they're talking about bringing Benjamin Sisko back for maybe his own series, or maybe he might appear in Picard. I don't know, but that would be cool.
I would.
I mean,
Well, I mean, could he appear? I mean, could he really appear though? I'll be honest. I didn't like
he
that.
could come back. I mean, he didn't die really.
I mean,
He-
see,
he's with the wormhole god alien people. Other
see,
people have come back, right? I mean,
I guess, but I mean, like that whole aspect of it was really just like I was like, I did not sit here for 4 months trying to finish this show for you to just leave your son like that. Like, I don't know.
yeah,
I get it. I feel like once we finished the Dominion War, and then it was like, oh yeah, we have to tie up this other plot line. Like it just felt very tacked on. I was like, oh okay, this episode's still going. All right, the season's still going. All right, and then all of a sudden he just, I guess, disappeared, or I don't know. I always found like the whole situation with him and the prophets like being a little weird. Um, just in general.
yeah.
I think for like who I would really like to see though in like a future Picard, because I'm gonna be honest, I think Picard was kind of trash.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Your volume's still kind of low, man. It's like I can hear you, but it's not very loud.
Oh, can you hear me better now?
I can hear you, but it's not very loud. It's like
Well, I don't know how to
like
fix that.
maybe if you can like turn it up somehow. I don't know. But you said you didn't like Picard,
No, I didn't like Picard.
really?
Yeah, no, it was a whole situation of like I have an issue with like, for example, so Picard and like season 2 of like Discovery, where essentially like the big bad was essentially like AI gods or whatever, and I was like, okay,
Yeah,
what?
and that's been done a lot in sci-fi, right? So it's not that compelling, really.
No,
But what I and Picard was not as good as I wanted it to be. I mean, I was like, man, I was when the trailer came out in like mid 2019 for Picard, me and many other people were like over the moon excited, man, and it was not that good.
no,
but but there were things in it that I really liked. I liked the stuff with, and if you haven't seen TNG, maybe you wouldn't appreciate it as much. I don't know if
I've
you have or
seen.
not, but I grew up on TNG,
Mhm.
so um. But the stuff with Data, how it bookended, like the beginning and the end, and him dying. I mean, I cried during that scene, and many other people did too. I mean, that was poetically good. Um, but there was also like kind of bad storytelling. Like they brought up plot lines and they dropped them and they didn't explain. And there was stuff that was really contrived and boring. Like the cube got kind of boring. Um, but the stuff with Data's daughter, I really like that because he was a painter in TNG and he always wanted a daughter. And a classic episode that's really widely acclaimed is called The Offspring, where he does make a daughter that dies at the end of it. So I really like the actress that did that part, and I like that whole story with Picard and how she found Picard and all of that. I loved, and I loved the episode in the Pente where they went and saw the Rikers on that planet, and I thought that was very well done. I like they brought Seven of Nine back. They brought characters that were not TNG that kind of it gave it a feel of kind of like expanding and connecting with the whole universe. And that's something too with me with Trek that I've always loved. It's kind of the original Marvel Cinematic Universe, right?
Mhm.
Because it has this big tapestry of different movies and series that all connect into a universe. This kind of like a real but fictional thing. Um, like the MCU. Uh, so I always like that. So it did that, and it had a lot of good stuff in it. It just wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, But there were great moments in it, and I'm looking forward when they finally start shooting the the second season. I hope they do it like they were rumored to do it back to back, season 2 and 3, and they should do that because I worry about Patrick Stewart's health, quite frankly. I mean, he's really old. But I am really thankful that they actually are doing this. I mean, a lot of people never in the actor himself, he said he was never coming back. So I'm really thrilled that they're doing it, just even if they're doing it, you know. And I've already got that one on Blu-ray. Um, yeah. So, but you said you started with Discovery, is that right?
Yeah, and I would honestly, you could say, it actually goes back a little further, but that's a whole like different story,
Okay.
like for another day.
Right.
But
Right.
it's one of those things of like I was really apprehensive to it at first, and then my one of my friends basically got me to the movie. I was like, okay, I watched the movie, and then I saw a series was happening. I was like, okay, cool, I'll watch this series. I don't know really what this is about. I always had like an interest. I had like actually like a bunch of friends who just randomly just liked Star Trek, but I just never was into it. I had this one friend who was just like, I don't well, he in high school, he essentially was really all about like for some reason he loved the animated like TOS, and I was like, okay,
The animated one. Wow.
yeah,
I will
and
say the animated Lower Deck show was really good,
oh,
surprisingly good. So
big surprise because I
that's cool. Yeah.
um
But people that like Star Trek, I mean, so you sound like a newcomer kind of to it, more or less.
more or less,
Uh, yeah,
but like it's one of those things that like I would say in the year of 2020 became more of a obsession because I really started to more appreciate a lot of the older series and a lot of the older films.
yeah,
Um, and
and
I
that's
think,
awesome. That's the thing about the new golden age of Trek. I mean, we're getting new fans and new generations into it. You're talking about a franchise that's going on 60 years old that has inspired generations of people to become doctors and engineers and astronauts, scientists, maybe even philosophers. Because it's distinct. Gene Roddenberry had a vision for an optimistic future that's all about unity and diversity. Infinite diversity and infinite combinations, and it's a little distinct from a lot of sci-fi because it's utopian, not dystopian. So it's a promising future, and it's also based on. It's kind of like contrast, like the Force of Star Wars, which is kind of like quasi-religious. With it's all about humanity in Star Trek and what humans can do. They don't have superpowers. They work together using reason and empathy, and it's very ethical show. The Prime Directive and just all the ethics of Trek also. Um, but it's all about humanism and humans and human potential and human flourishing and human unity and other kinds of unity also. Um, it's a show that from the beginning, it was a mirror that held up to our world. So it kind of like you were exploring the final frontier physically in space while you're exploring the final frontier internally in yourself and the human condition, right?
mhm,
Um, so you had the first interracial kiss on TV. You had commentary on the Cold War and all kinds of things, and it's never stopped doing that.
mhm,
And even today, you watch the actors, they get it that are in the show, what it's all about. It has a message, it has substance, it has a vision. It's also science based, very science based. So there's no magical stuff going on. I mean, sometimes it's fiction. Q, I love Q, but it's kind of, and even the beta Zeds, they can read emotions and stuff. It's kind, a little bit, but more or less, they have science advisors on every show, and they try to base it on everything on give everything a rational scientific explanation as much as possible, right?
mhm,
So I really dig that. Um, and some people might disagree and might find it controversial, but if you watch my channel, you'll know I'm not a big fan of religion, and neither was the Star Trek's creator Gene Roddenberry. I mean, I knew Gene Roddenberry's a longtime assistant Richard Arnold, who assisted him from like so Richard Arnold recently passed away. Unfortunately, he had cancer, but um, I met him at a convention in like 2012, and he flattered me. He said, "You remind me of Gene Roddenberry," and I was like, "Oh, come on!" And I asked him over the years, "You don't really mean that? You're exaggerating." It's like, "No, no, you really. I mean, you remind me like almost more than anybody. You and maybe like one other person remind me of him." Uh, but Gene Roddenberry did not like religion. He was all about humanism and science. And I really like that. That's another thing that I didn't pay attention to maybe when I was younger that I really get now. Like something like Star Trek can appeal to a kid, kind of, right? Maybe because they like the space battles and stuff, right? But it has so many sophisticated layers to it. You can get the social commentary, and then you can get maybe the humanism and the secularism and all of that too. So that's something very cool that I definitely, when I was growing up, I didn't really get or pay attention to. But then later I did. So, but anyway, Richard Arnold, yeah, he's told me all kinds of stories when he was alive about Gene Roddenberry, behind the scenes, and like stuff like they tried to get him to put like a chapel on the Enterprise, and he was like, "Nah, it's not gonna happen." Stuff like that. I think they eventually got one in Balance of Terror, but they wanted to put a bunch of religious iconography on it, and he like said, "No, we're not gonna have that." It was kind of like this vague thing, this vague chapelish thing, right?
Mhm.
Um, but anyway, he told me all kinds of stories about that, and so, you know, anyway, my point is it's way more than just some sci-fi show. It's got a lot of stuff to it that a lot of people get out of it that's inspired a lot of people. I mean, and something's got to have something to it, if it inspires so many people. And just people to go to conventions every year and be so passionate about it. It's like it's not like a sitcom like that nobody they watch, but they don't think about it after they watch it, right? It's not like a like Michael Burnham at the beginning of season 3 of Discovery. What's his name? Book says, you're like a true believer, right? And when I was watching that, I was thinking, I'm kind of a true believer, and like this is where I think humanity is gonna go if it stays on the right path and it adopts these ideas and these ideals that Star Trek is about. But I keep talking and being really long winded, but um, just to get that out, I mean, this is a special franchise. Uh, so yeah, and it's awesome somebody else like you has gotten into it. Wherever you come into it.
I see. I think though one aspect about I think Star Trek is not without its flaws, right? I think
Oh
that
sure, yeah,
I
yeah.
think like there's a conversation to be had around like Starfleet itself and about like really what is the role of it, because depending on who's like really show running like that particular series or that show, they depict a different version or their version of Starfleet. And that has come from a situation of like, okay, well, Starfleet's a bunch of warmongers, low key, or Starfleet is like peace officers, or Starfleet is explorers. And I think that is like a bigger question that no one really like has been able to like hone down on who Starfleet is. And maybe it's a bit of everything, right? Maybe it is literally, it's just everything. But I personally feel like that's just something that I think like hopefully like the newer series will tackle a little bit more of. And hopefully, because I believe that the way that's not that
Well,
like
they're
saying,
building it back up into something kind of new. And I tell you what, man, I like the new season of Discovery is way better than the first two.
oh great.
And it's what I wanted it to be all along in the future. Keep going forward, right? I'm getting tired of all the prequels, to be quite honest. Since Enterprise, it's been going back, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I was thrilled that they did that, and it wasn't perfect,
No.
but overall, season 3 was just so much better. Just the overall general direction and everything. Yeah. So
I 100% agree.
yeah.
I think
But we still have these channels like Nerdrotic and Midnight's Edge, and I don't even remember the other ones that they nothing will satisfy them. They spew venom without pause. They're like incessant pools of negativity and conspiracy theory and cynicism. Uh, it's like, man, and some of these guys even they're like they're like kind of conservative, kind of like right wing conservative, and they're like, oh, all the white people are always being put down. I'm like, what? Do you guys ever watch Star Trek? This is a progressive show, right? It's always been about being progressive, about being inclusive. I mean, it boggles my mind. I guess it goes back to like when you're a kid, you just pay attention to certain things and you don't notice other things. I guess some
mm,
of these guys are like kids and they don't pay attention that much. But yeah, these toxic fans really are disappointing I wish they wouldn't call themselves fans, because it's like you don't fit as a Star Trek fan. I mean, you can have valid criticisms of something without being incessantly negative, and nothing pleases you, and everything's a conspiracy. It's insane, man.
Agreed.
That's my opinion.
No, no.
I can't even watch those channels even more.
I really, at first I was like, oh, I wonder what other people think about it, and I started watching it. I was like, oh, okay, all right, let me let me get off of this, because
Yeah,
there was just one thing. I think the last thing I watched, because I was just wondering like what someone's recent opinion of like season 3 would be, and it really just talked about like this whole idea of like virtue signaling and all that. And I was like, okay, you know what, like I feel
yeah,
like there's a lot of valid things to say about Star Trek. There's a bunch of things
yeah.
to be said about the series and like the shows and like what it means, but like to just like go out of your way to not even provide like additional context to why you even believe these things or why you're saying these things, like, and I think that's been my biggest issue. I'll be honest, like I did not film like the last 2 episodes on my channel because one, for the pre ultimate one, I was just like, okay, I'm just not going to do this. And then the last one, I filmed it, but I just felt as though like it didn't, it wasn't what I wanted it to be, right? And it's something that I've continued to actually think about for like the past couple of weeks, because I was like, am I going to go back to this? But I really thought it was just going to be I think of like making a video really just talking about like why people just dislike the series, because in general, I think like going forward, Star Trek is going to still go in this direction. Like we're in a modern day, we're in 2021. Like the type of storytelling that is being told is going to be happening. Whether like Strange New Worlds becomes more episodic or not, or whether like Section 31 is, I have no idea what the hell that's going to
I'm
be.
not excited for that one.
I don't
To be
know.
honest with you,
I
that's
don't
the
know
one
what
I'm
that's
not
going to
really
be.
excited about.
I mean, I love Michelle Yeoh, but I'm like,
I don't either.
what is this going to be? I don't know. But
Yeah, that episode with her this season that had the Guardian of Forever was so weird, because parts of it I loved so much. The connecting back, to the franchise, to the universe, the Guardian. That's awesome, right? But then the just kind of like sudden, like the mirror universe again. This comic book bad mirror universe. I was like, oh my, are you really doing this again? I hated it, but
well,
then I kind of liked it more in the second part, and I kind of got where it was going. She was kind of doing some kind of alternate mirror universe that existed separately from the mirror universe, and she was had the Guardian was testing her or whatever. Okay, eh, but yeah, that was weird. I wasn't. A lot of people weren't expecting that, but
so
it turned out overall good. But
fun little
yeah,
fact. Um, I actually love Mirror First episodes because I just think they're so weird.
really,
I love I think they're just so weird. I think though that the choices though that sometimes that are made in these episodes are really bonkers and off the wall, because it's
yeah,
like, all right, well, if you're really just trying to go for a polar opposite, it's just the polar opposite that you would have gone with. But I think of that episode was something. But I think of like I totally just lost my train of thought. Oh my god, it was about Michelle Yeoh, that mirror universe. Oh, for me, that episode really did. There's something I've always been wondering, like for like the time that I've been watching the show. It's just like, is there a multiverse? And I feel like that episode kind of proved that point, because excuse me, because for me, because I was always confused as to like, okay, so there's the prime world and there's the mirror world, and then there's like another timeline somewhere else. But like to me,
yeah.
like in my mind, I was like, that's not really proving a multiverse, but it kind of is. But I feel like this episode really like said, hey, everything is really
Ha-
connected.
yeah,
And
yeah. Have you seen Parallels, the TNG episode?
no, but I can. No, I'll just go watch it.
You got to go back and watch TNG. I mean,
I know.
man,
I gotta
that's
restart.
you got to what?
I gotta restart. I gotta just
Okay.
try and get through TNG.
Well, in Parallels, Worf is traveling to parallel universes where like different, just like variations with like certain things. Somebody's dead in this universe, and this universe, the Borg took over the universe and stuff like that. Um, but one thing that does aggravate me is people keep trying to say, "Oh, Discovery it's a different universe. I'm like, no, the creators say it's the prime timeline. And they even, the episode I loved in season 2 where they go back to Talos, which is like the original pilot, the cage, the big mind reading aliens. They even showed literal footage of the cage, the 1964 episode. This is the prime, and they've done a lot of things to try to make it line up. Like Pike, they lined up, his he eventually, is crippled or whatever. Um, but you're gonna have it not look. This is the problem with doing a prequel, right? Because it's gonna look like it's not, I guess, more advanced, and it's supposed to be less advanced. You're just gonna have that problem with a prequel, you know. So don't do that, in my opinion. But they did do things, and people said, "Oh, they don't care. They don't give a damn about canon," but they do. I mean, they've done a lot of things that the Klingons know. That was weird, right? I mean, the Klingons look like some kind of mutant race. They did not look like Klingons, but they even there they listened to fans and they started putting like hair on them and they made them less, crazy and more human like. So, yeah, no, they do care, and there's a lot of fans on the show. I mean, Gene Roddenberry's son is a producer, Rod Roddenberry.
Oh,
Yeah, and yeah, and a lot of the people are fans. So, but anyway, it's the Prime universe. This is the main universe, right? And then we know that the J.J. Abrams movies created kind of a new like alternate universe, right?
Kelvin.
They even mentioned that in that episode with Michelle Yeoh. Yeah, and that was nice. I love that. Always when they connect stuff together, right? The franchise, like it's one big universe. Um, so we have that, and then we have the mirror universe, and now I guess we have another mirror universe that was kind of created when she went through the gateway. Michelle Yeoh, I guess. But yeah, I mean, the main thing is there's a main universe, and all the main live action Star Trek is in that main universe. Like the rest of it stop, right?
Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
I think though I'm really optimistic though for the future and like hopefully where everything's gonna go. Like outside of a pandemic, I I feel like a lot of things have been put on pause and people have been trying to figure out like what's next, what are we doing? And I'm pretty sure like I think they started filming season 4 already, and then for Discovery, and I think they're going to film Strange New Worlds in the spring, supposedly. I don't know if that's gonna happen. Well, it's in
Picard is like in a couple days. They're supposed to start that.
Oh, okay. Well, then here.
Yeah, February 1, I think.
Okay, well then I'm excited for that. I'm looking forward to that.
Don't die, Patrick Stewart. Come on, get through it.
But like, I would love I don't know. I just really hope that it continues along this direction, that we continue to see this. Personally, I think I want a more low-key Star Trek show. And I said I would never say this on camera, but I don't really care. So personally, I think that we should, just it goes down to my taste level of like things that I can really deal with. I think we should have a show that's focused on mainly the Academy, like just the Academy as a whole, and eventually later seasons build into like them integrating into crews.
They've been talking about doing a show like that for literally decades, and they never done it. But they kind of did it with the JJ movie a little bit. They showed like a young, Kirk and Spock and everything, and so they did show some things we've not seen before, in that movie. So there's that. But yeah, you're right. That could be interesting. Just an entire ongoing series on the Academy.
I also think like, especially with the prevalence of the teen shows throughout everything, some of them are bad, some of them are good, and some people just slap a nice little label on and say like, oh, this is a new saga. I'm like, okay, no, it's not, but whatever. I think though it would be really interesting to like get more people involved. Like, I don't know, I know this is about to sound bad, but like put it on the CW. Like it's just
on the CW.
Yeah.
No,
but hear me out.
CW.
Hear me out.
That would be weird.
Well, I mean,
they did have the 100,
which is great.
It was a good show. Yeah.
Right now, it's kind of weird, but yeah.
Yeah. And now, I watched the pilot of Walker Texas Ranger on the CW, only because Lindsay Morgan from the 100 was on that.
Oh, yeah.
What's her name on the show? God, the one that has the leg thing, the engineer.
Yeah.
Raven or
yeah.
because I think she's pretty damn hot, and I wanted to watch her in that. But yeah, the CW, I don't know, man. I don't
You're
think that would be a good fit, in my opinion.
I think the only reason why I think it fits is because like for the audience that you're trying to reach. And I feel like the audience that I personally think that would really like benefit from this and probably get involved in other aspects of the show is literally I think would need the CW. I just feel like it's just one of those it's just one of those networks that like it can be the amalgamation, right? Like you're not going to see it on a CBS. I don't personally think we should put everything on streaming platforms. Be honest.
Well, the thing is, man, we're going through this deep transformation in entertainment where we're going towards streaming. I mean, I've got HBO Max. You
Mhm.
know, I just watched Wonder Woman 1984. I mean, this is the way things are going. Yeah, it wasn't that great, but it had a couple good moments, but it's kind of not that great either. But anyway, yeah, I mean, every movie this year from Warner Brothers is gonna be on the HBO Max the same day it comes out at the theater.
Mhm.
So, you know, everybody is streaming. Who's not streaming?
I mean,
Even the CW, I watched that on an app, right? The CW app. So,
I personally just though am just like a staunch. Can we just put something on TV, like, and let it be on TV though? And I just feel like though, I mean, if it's not on CW, personally, it's okay. But I just feel like a nice, really high drama, high stakes, very okay. So The Magicians. I don't know if you ever watched The Magicians. That was like one of my favorite shows for years. It's based off of books.
sci-fi, right?
Yeah. Um, I think. Well, maybe we put actually Star Trek on sci-fi. Anyway, not the point.
Well, you look.
I,
I know you review The Expanse, which I love. I think that's one of the best sci-fi shows ever.
oh,
And I didn't like that when it started. It was like this weird, like crime noir with a guy with a cowboy. I'm not a cowboy, fedora or whatever in space. But it's really good. I mean, it's kind of gotten better every year. But that got canceled when it was on TV, on cable TV, and got saved by Amazon. You know, so I think it's doing pretty well. I think they're canceling it after season 6, but I don't know why, because it's doing pretty good. I think,
I think they're trying to
right?
speed up towards the ending, which ironically, like the last book isn't even out, so like that's a whole thing in itself.
Which it makes me mad because that's a show that could really keep going for like 12 years, and it's based on all these books, right? That yeah, so
But they've
that's
done most of the book.
disappointing. But
They've done most
was
of the
that
book. There's like nine books that we're waiting. They're like, where? I'm not reading this book. They're
they've
waiting.
got a couple they haven't hit on? I think
Yeah, there's a couple
at
things
least a
they're
couple.
waiting on, but they've pretty much like they're racing towards the end at this point. Like, I really do think like
Okay.
season 6 is gonna have more stuff of that book that hasn't been released yet. Possibly, maybe, I don't know. But
This is another thing, by the way, that Star Trek has given us. A lot of the creative talent from past shows have gone on to kind of helm future great sci-fi. Like Ronald D. Moore went on to do the new Battlestar Galactica that
mhm,
was on that everybody pretty much loved in like the early 2000s. And Naren, how do you say his name? Naren Shankar. He's the like head runner on The Expanse, and he was a writer on TNG, just like Ronald D. Moore.
mhm.
So I don't know if you knew that or not, but a lot of these guys that are helming these best sci-fi shows, they were come from Star Trek. So yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I think that speaks to a lot, though. I think that sci-fi has a lot to offer to people, and I just feel like if people get away
you
from
mean
like
the genre or the network?
the genre, not well the
Okay.
network maybe, I don't know, but
Oh yeah, absolutely.
um,
Yeah, because
okay,
no, I was gonna say in sci-fi, like what Star Trek does, you can comment on the world and on the human condition. You can touch on themes that are timeless, and in a creative way. You know that putting it out on some kind of thing that's not our reality, but comments on our reality,
mhm,
and it can go a lot of places that like a maybe a crime drama or something couldn't. You know, like it could extrapolate on ideas and things that we deal with, like I don't know, like genetic engineering or um, climate change or any host of things that we deal with now. It can creatively expand on that and take it to places to kind of get into it and examine it in a creative way. So yeah, good sci-fi is some of the best, maybe the best type of entertainment that there is.
I completely agree because
But I
sometimes.
like it to be science based to some extent. If it's
Mhm.
not, don't call it sci-fi, right? like like the Lord of the Rings is not sci-fi.
No.
Nobody I think said it is, but Star Wars has kind of elements of that, like fantasy type elements, like the
Yeah,
Force. It's kind of fantasy, you
I
know.
wouldn't say. Well, think about it now. I wouldn't count Star Trek, not Star Trek, Star Wars as like sci-fi.
It's
I
kind of
think,
like a hybrid, right?
yeah, I think it's
Sci-fi
more like,
fantasy. Yeah.
yeah, like a high space opera situation going on.
Yeah.
Which
Mandalorian's good, by the way.
Oh no, I love Mandalorian, but like the rest of
Yeah.
the Skywalker saga from like well, there's so many things to talk about like within that space in general,
Yeah.
and like their toxic fandom is like crazy, but like I don't know.
I've just always hated
Hmm?
I've just always hated the comparison with Star Trek. That's my only thing because I
Oh, it
love
doesn't make
Star
any
Trek
sense.
and Star Wars. It's okay. It has its moments, but people want to compare it to Star Trek because star in the name and it's among the stars, I guess. But no, like it's so different, and that's what I don't like. If it was different, people didn't make the comparisons. I'd never hate on Star Wars. I think it's decent. It does some good stuff. So
I think
yeah,
what they're doing though now with Marvel is basically doing well, who owns what at this point. I think what they're doing
yeah,
now with releasing more of a we're gonna go way away from like Anakin and all of them and like have more of a conversation on like the High Republic and like stuff like that. I think that is going to hopefully lead for better stories and better entertainment in
yeah.
the run.
There's a great meme. Um, it has George Lucas and Gene Roddenberry, like a cartoon version of them, like side by side. So the creator of Star Trek and the creator of Star Wars,
Mhm.
and it says the philosophy of Star Wars and the philosophy of Star Trek. And the philosophy of Star Wars, it says blue good, bad or red bad. Like the simple good evil. And then Star Trek's philosophy is Gene Roddenberry saying humanity has moved beyond crime and poverty and prejudice, and we're realizing our common interests, and that kind of, it's hilarious, but there's a lot of truth to it.
Mhm.
The contrasting that.
It is a very complex story, and I feel like there's a lot to gain from it. But
Well, Star Wars can comment on like simple good and evil, good versus evil, and like I guess kind of tyrannical governments, the Empire, I guess. But Star
yeah,
Trek's about everything. I mean, it's philosophical. It touches all kinds of topics in a
agreed.
really deep way. So,
I completely agree.
yep. And the great thing about Star Trek too is like, and at least it used to be the case. You could have like so many different things in a single season, like the variety of it. You could have like a courtroom drama, an all-out comedy, a love story, pure adventure. You know, so that was pretty awesome. You know, it's not really like that anymore because it's so serialized, I think. But they still kind of touch up on different themes. Throughout the
Mhm.
season.
Well, I think like hopefully that's something that people that are writing these shows are really thinking about more about like how do we at least bridge the modern way of like making television with the spirit of like the golden age of Star Trek in the sense of like the DS9s, TNGs, you say Voyager. So like
Right.
bridging that gap. So hopefully that's something that at least I don't really know what Section 31 is going to do. I'll be honest, I'm really confused. Um,
I
I,
honestly don't care. I mean, you guys pushed that one on down the line, and that's cool with me.
I thought it got canceled, uh,
I did too.
but then they said, "Oh, it's coming back." So what? I thought this.
People were saying that Discovery got canceled when it's like it was shooting since November,
Mhm.
and I think they already got season 5 locked in. I
Oh,
think.
I thought season 4 was their
Yeah.
last season.
I hope not. At least give it a season 5.
Hey,
3 whole seasons in the future, kind
mhm.
of rebuilding the Federation. Uh, yeah, because now I mean they don't have any of those constricting, canon. We gotta walk on eggshells and watch where we go. that no series has ever gone this far in the future. I mean, it's completely open. That's interesting.
Agreed.
Rebuilding the Federation's interesting too, quite frankly. And also, some of it couldn't have been planned because of when they filmed it, but it really reflects season three, kind of our world a little bit, like because we're all like kind of disconnected and kind of like isolated, kind of like the Federation is, right?
Mhm.
And then they had that beautiful message at the end of the last episode of season three, the kind of montage about being connected,
Agreed.
social animals eating connection and all that, and had that quote from Gene Roddenberry at the end. But yeah, you said you didn't like the last episode. Is that right?
No. I said I didn't like what I filmed about the last episode.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood you.
Yeah, no,
The only thing I didn't like about that, like I love the kind of the dialogue debate between God, what's his name, the admiral guy, Vance,
Vance,
and the green lady. I forget her name.
Osira.
Oh, right. Oh, sorry. Yeah, there you go. The dialogue they had was like epically good, and it made sense, and if like it followed naturally, like she's really wants an alliance, right? And the way that they're back and forth made just was completely believable and like immersed you in the moment. Like this, yeah, I can see this happening. It makes sense. You don't get that sometimes with Discovery. It kind of seems like you're watching plot points, and things are not like really flowing naturally, like you think that it would happen naturally, right?
Mhm.
But that definitely did. And the last episode was good too. But the thing I did not like and I could not believe is that turbo lift fight. Like,
Oh,
what in the world? Is there a city in there? Like, what? How can you explain that to me?
I've always
Like,
so
that was insane.
whenever they've like shown like the inside of like the turbo lifts and everything, I'm like, how big are these damn ships? Um, but then the fact that like now, I guess now we're in the future, so everything's literally off of rails. Um,
But it's the same ship, and then it's only so big, unless it's like Doctor Who and it's bigger inside.
I really I do think that that's really what's going on here because I think because
Really,
he's able to comprehend like how big
they
these
could at
ships
least
are.
articulate that if that's somehow true.
Yeah, because
I
even
think that's kind of bad writing.
no, I agree. No, I agree with that. I think like that's like
Yeah,
a slight issue. I also think
yeah.
like there I had a whole like inner dialogue, which is kind of the reason why I just didn't ever release that video. Was really just like, did Burnham really learn something? Did she really make changes? Or did she basically just become more sure of herself? Like, and to me, I realized like she just became more sure of herself, but at the same time, like her being, I would say, a black woman, though, uh, she's not doing anything that any of the other traditional captains that were white were doing. She literally has the same exact experience, except she's just a black woman. So I don't see why I should even like question her actions as much as like, or be so critical. And when I wouldn't even be that critical of like if Picard did it, or if Archer did it, or if Kirk did it. So it's like
Kirk, have you seen the original series?
I've seen parts of it.
Kirk was like he was a cowboy, man. He was always doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
you know,
So that's my point. Saying like, well,
yeah, yeah. I thought that was awesome. Yeah. And again, those last scenes were great. The uh, last episode of season three. Um, but lost my train of thought. Go ahead, man. I forgot what I was gonna say.
no, I
Hate
just
when
really
that
like to
happens.
hear. I'm happy that she finally earned her seat, like in her captain seat. Even though I would say I would be the one to argue that like throughout the entire series, like I think her biggest flaw is that like they write her in such a way that she's never wrong. Like she's never ultimately wrong.
That Yeah, what I was gonna say is okay, her character arc, right? She goes from being the only mutineer in the history of Starfleet to being the captain now. And I get that. So her character has always had kind of an issue with authority, and like it's not gonna be by the book if she knows that that's the wrong thing to do, right?
Mhm.
I get that, but sometimes it seems like she goes back and forth, and like I'm like, where are they going? Like she like completely disobeys Saru, and then now she's back on Starfleet again. She's a true believer at one point. They kind of go back and forth a little bit with that, and
Yeah.
maybe you can chalk that up to like her just kind of struggling, because people do struggle and they go back and forth, and I guess I don't want to chalk it up to bad writing, but there
I
is a
think
little bit of inconsistency there.
I think it's like people not having a conversation like the complexities of like her character as a whole. I think like because at the end of the day, she was never really, even when she mutineered, she wasn't really wrong. I mean, she was,
Right.
I
Yeah.
it, and that's been my biggest thing is just like no one has really addressed that issue, that thing as a whole. Like I would personally like to see her be wrong at least once. Um, I mean, like yes, some of
I
her.
think she's been wrong before. Some people that's the thing that bugs me a little bit is people go overboard about how she's a Mary Sue and all this, right?
Oh yeah,
She's
yeah.
like a superhero. I think they exaggerate that. The
Hmm.
thing is she's kind of the main character, and that's a different thing for Star Trek to have such a main character and everything is through their perspective.
Hmm.
Um, but even especially this year, I mean, like there's been many instances where she is not the main focal point and she's not like the main mover of what's going on.
Which I like,
And what's that?
which I really do like. Oh, did the internet cut out? Hello? Oh, okay, we're back. I don't know what happened.
I didn't leave.
Which that's the one thing I really did like was especially within this season. Like that was probably like the primary thing was like actually getting to know like the other people within the crew besides Tilly.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah, they need to give people more screen time. Like,
like
the crew that's on the bridge. A little bit more, you know. It's
I
kind of
mean
weird.
I think that that's one of the one of the big trigger points from season 3 compared to the other 2 seasons was because we got to have more of a like internal conversation with like Detmer and Owasakun and see I have to think.
Right, you don't know their name, right?
Yeah, so like
What one thing that I want do you watch Trek Yards at all?
no, I haven't watched it.
Okay. Do you know who they are?
No.
Okay, they comment on, they do reviews kind of like you
Mhm.
do. Star Trek. And one of them made a great point that I would rather have a really great, just two people in a room and a really great conversation and dialogue than like 2 minutes of just mindless action that I don't care about. You know what I mean? You can have the action spliced in there, right? But
Mhm.
it's so true that when you just have, and Trek is great. Trek at its best is two people having great dialogue. And I can't believe you haven't seen TNG to watch the power of Patrick Stewart and some of his dialogues. I
I
mean,
mean, I've watched parts of TNG. I just never have like sat there and watched it like chronologically of like everything like that.
gotcha.
I've seen like
Have you seen Measure of a Man, where like Data's on trial for being whether he's property or they want to like subject him to like some kind of experiment that might mess up his positronic brain, and there's like a trial whether or not he has a right to reject it. If he's the property of Starfleet or not.
hmm,
And man, that is an all-time great dialogue episode,
okay,
for
so
example.
you're convincing me on like going back. I have been looking for a new show. So you're convincing me on
Gotta
going.
watch it, man. It's on CBS All Access.
It's on everything
Although
actually.
weirdly, some of their seasons are not in HD, and
Uh-huh.
that is really weird. Because
Hmm.
when I bought the Blu-ray of season one, I was blown away. It looks like a completely different show from what I had seen before. Um, Completely different. So that's very odd that they don't have some of their seasons in HD. Amazon, I think, does have all of them in HD. So
Hmm.
definitely watch in HD because the whole series is in HD now. So,
Well,
but
hey,
yeah, man, TNG, you can't, you got to watch that. I mean, if you're a Star Trek fan and you have not seen that,
I think my friend kept trying to convince me into it, and like, and my thing was like, it's just like the fact that I've been going backwards, kind of more or less, of like watching a lot of these things,
so you
and
haven't seen TOS either, right?
I've seen parts of TOS, but like,
Okay. That's a show that I did not watch all of it for many, 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 many years, and I didn't really care to. But then when I did, I bought the big Blu-ray box set, and I really appreciate it. Though it is kind of like crappy in some ways, the production value and like they're not chronological. It seems like at all. Like they don't know what happened last episode ever, so that's kind of weird. But yeah, I mean, there's some awesome storytelling in that show, even for the sixth season. The crappy music and there's a lot of stuff that's like aggravating, but if you can see through that, I mean, there's some really great stories.
well, I'll be honest, it sounds better than like me going back to watch like the real season 1 of like Doctor Who, which I did try that, and
You mean the 60s?
yeah,
Oh man, I would never do that.
I was
I
just
love modern Doctor Who, but
oof,
no, I can't deal with the old one.
I was so curious. I was like, oh wow, I'm not doing this again.
I was curious enough to watch like 2 minutes of it, and then I'm like, okay, I'm done. That was interesting.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But all right, well, we've had a very long conversation. I hope that it's been
I
really
just got off a 3-hour podcast, man. So I've been doing like podcasts all day. So I mean, it's cool. But yeah. If we're wrapping up, man, thank you for having me on your channel, and maybe perhaps you'll be back on mine at some point. Just to
yeah.
mention, you were on an episode. You had to kind of drop off early, but
Yeah, sorry, I had a
yeah,
doctor's appointment.
yeah, no worries, man. Yeah, it was fun.
No problem.
Um, Definitely.
Well,
Thank you for having me on.
no, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. I really do appreciate it.
Yep.
Anyway, thank y'all so much for watching. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Absolutely.